join as panelist.
Let's see. Entire screen, I guess.
You just want your PPT, you could do that, whatever.
I can share desktop, right?
Sure.
Because I will be switching the screen. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to catch up. All right. Sorry about that. Next time we will use Amazon Chime. So we won't have the technology issue. AWS Lambda developed locally. That is the topic. Little bit about myself. 20 years in IT. That's the role I have done. You find me in many places: LinkedIn, tech blogs, YouTube, and so on. What we're going to do in this session today, we're going to focus on developing a Lambda function locally before we deploy it in AWS cloud. AWS provide a framework, which is AWS SAM. It's a serverless application model. Really neat infrastructure as code service that AWS provide, and that's what we're gonna use for this session. Tools and services that we need to continue developing Lambda using AWS SAM. We of course need AWS SAM CLI. We gonna use VSCode and AWS Toolkit, which is an extension for the VSCode. The steps, we're gonna build a function. We're gonna invoke it locally. It's not in the cloud at this point. We're gonna validate it, we're going to debug it, and once everything looks good, we're going to deploy it to the AWS cloud. So the whole concept is that you are able to develop and validate it locally before you upload it, and that's just like traditional developer workflow. Here is the architecture diagram for this function. Very simple. The first diagram is very simple. There is a REST API that is invoking the Lambda function. Lambda function is written in Python, simple dictionary that has a state code and a state name, and you pass a state code, it returns you a state name. Second diagram here, how it should be built. So there is an API, but it is a secure API endpoint through a API key or a OAuth 2 framework. It's still the Lambda function, but instead of getting it from a dictionary, it's getting it from a DynamoDB database and returning to the end client, which is the API here. Both of these code sample, I'll have it in the Git repo, but for this session, we'll focus on the simple part, which is the first diagram here. First thing first, I always like to remind whenever there is anything cloud that set up your budget, use the Cost Explorer. AWS provide really nice services and the views to control your cost, visualize it, and be in control so that you are not shocked by the bill. That's often an issue that companies say, hey, our cloud bill is increasing. Yes, it is increasing because nobody is monitoring it, right? So that just need to be part of it. Again, serverless SAM, multiple way to initiate it. There is a CLI, the SAM init command. There is a VS Code, AWS Toolkit, and of course, then there is a third way where you build a template, and it's in YAML. I'm going to focus on the second and third way of doing it, which is basically through the AWS Toolkit in VS Code, and also the building the template file from the scratch. We need VS Code, we need AWS Toolkit, we need Docker, that is Docker container is needed to validate the function locally. We need SAM CLI installed for our environment. And of course, we need Python or any other language that's supported by SAM framework. I already have all this set up, so I'm not gonna install it, but this is just, I wanted to call out. The first example, I wanna run it quickly, is like through the toolkit. And this is a neat way that AWS provide to quickly get started with the SAM framework. I have these few slides here for reference where it say that, okay, right click on your Lambda, select a Python runtime, and then select your folder, build it, and it's ready to go. And that's basically the demo slides. I have it here for reference. But when we are talking about a function and a programming language, there is no better way to visualize it than actually diving into the code. So with that in context, while slides are there for the reference, I do want to start with the VS Code here, just so you see it, how it is done. So this is VS Code. If you are familiar with VS Code IDE, you know that all the extensions show up in the navigation. So I'm gonna click on AWS. This is the toolkit extension. I can find my service here, which is Lambda, okay. Not sharing. Let me. Nope. All right. Sorry about that. See your screen sharing. It's frozen actually, for some reason.